It started as a normal day on Earth. People went about their business, working, playing, and living their lives. No one knew that the galaxy was about to change forever. The news came suddenly. It wasn't a broadcast, not a scheduled announcement. It was a message from somewhere in deep space. The first sign that something was wrong was the static crackling over the communication channels. Then the image appeared. A small human child, no older than 10, surrounded by towering figures that looked nothing like people. These beings, the Varlock, were known throughout the galaxy for their cruelty and cold demeanor. They had captured the boy and were holding him in a cage, their laughter filling the air as they tormented him for their amusement. The boy was dirty and bruised, his clothes torn. His face showed fear, but there was also something else: defiance. He did not beg. Instead, he stared at the camera, his eyes full of courage. And then the alien voice spoke. Weak, frail, unworthy. The Varlock had been experimenting with human prisoners for years, but this time was different. They had chosen a child, believing the boy's weakness would bring them great pleasure. They believed Earth was too far away, too disconnected from the rest of the galaxy, to ever respond. They believed humanity was just another weak species in a galaxy full of stronger ones. The broadcast echoed across the stars. It wasn't just a message, it was a challenge. The Varlock thought they were proving their superiority. Instead, they had done something much worse. They had provoked Earth. On Earth, no one knew who the child was. He was a boy, alone in space. But that didn't matter. His capture was an insult to humanity. An insult that could not go unanswered. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. People were shocked. Many tried to call for help, asking the Galactic Council to do something. They asked for diplomacy, for a peaceful solution. But the Council's response was the same as it always had been. They were too busy with their own problems to focus on a single human child. The Varlock were too powerful, too dangerous to challenge. But Earth was different. In a dark, quiet room on Earth's moon, a small group of officials watched the broadcast. They were the ones who had been waiting for something like this to happen. They knew the truth. Humanity had been underestimated. The Varlock thought they could hurt a child without consequences. What they didn't know was that Earth had a secret that had been hidden for decades. The officials, the only ones in the galaxy who knew about it, exchanged quiet words. They didn't need to speak much. Their eyes said everything. It was time. Time for humanity to show the galaxy what it was truly capable of. The room was filled with screens, each one showing different corners of the galaxy, different species going about their lives. The officials' fingers moved quickly over the control panels, activating systems that hadn't been used in years. Ships began to power up in hidden shipyards. The old, forgotten fleets of Earth were waking up. Are we really doing this? One of the officials asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We don't have a choice, another responded. This isn't just about one child. This is about showing the galaxy who we are. Outside, the Earth's atmosphere was calm, peaceful. But beneath that surface, a storm was forming. A storm of power, of rage, and of unyielding determination. The Phantom Fleet was about to make its move. The Phantom Fleet had been Earth's secret for years. The ships were built in secret shipyards far beyond the reach of any spy, hidden in asteroid fields and forgotten moons. They were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, sleek, powerful, and built for stealth. The fleets of the galaxy's major powers would be no match for them. As the fleet powered up, Earth's military leaders prepared themselves for what was to come. There would be no official declarations of war, no grand speeches. The Phantom Fleet would do its job silently, without a single word being spoken. They would go into the heart of Varlock space, and they would take back what was theirs. The Varlock didn't know it yet, but their time was running out. As the message continued to play on every screen across the galaxy, Earth began its quiet counterattack. The Varlock had thought they could play with a human child. Now they would learn that Earth did not tolerate such things. The human child's tears were real, but they weren't the end of the story. They were just the beginning. The galaxy had underestimated Earth for too long, but that was about to change. Across the galaxy, the response to the Varlock's cruel treatment of the human child was mixed. Many were shocked by the broadcast, and a few sympathized with the boy. But the Galactic Council, made up of the most powerful alien species, paid little attention. After all, a single human child didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But Earth knew better. The Council thought humanity would beg, plead, and try to negotiate. They were wrong. Earth had been preparing for this moment for years, quietly building its secret fleet, and now that preparation was about to pay off. On Earth, the response was swift, but silent. There were no public speeches, no big meetings with world leaders. Instead, high-level military officials worked in hidden underground bunkers. It was a strange feeling of calm. People across the planet went about their daily lives, unaware of the storm building in the shadows. In a dark room on Earth's moon, Commander Talia Rice stood before a massive control panel. She was the leader of the Phantom Fleet, a secret force that only a few trusted officials even knew existed. Rice had spent years preparing for this moment. And now, it was time to move. The child's face, bruised and broken on the Varlock broadcast, burned in her mind. But it wasn't just the child's pain that drove her. It was what that pain represented. Earth was tired of being ignored, tired of being underestimated. Ready to move out, Commander, her second-in-command, Lieutenant Mark Lawson, said as he entered the room. He was a young officer, but his calm demeanor and sharp mind had earned him Rice's respect. "Do it," Rice replied, her voice steady but full of determination. "It's time." The Phantom Fleet, which had been dormant for years, was now alive. Ships powered up in silence, their sleek hulls gliding out of hidden bases on moons and asteroid fields far from prying eyes. These ships were built for stealth. They could slip past even the most advanced sensors, unseen by enemy forces. They were designed to strike quickly and without warning. As the fleet began to move toward Varlock space, the higher-ups on Earth's military base remained calm. They knew what they had to do. They knew that Earth's moment had come. But what they didn't know was that this mission would forever change the way the galaxy viewed humanity. The first phase of the mission was simple: get to the Varlock colony without detection. The Phantom Fleet had perfected the art of remaining unseen, and Earth's ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. They had no flashy weapons or enormous battleships, like the ones used by other empires. They were quiet, fast, and efficient. They didn't need to fight a war. They needed to show that Earth was not to be taken lightly. By now, the Galactic Council was starting to take notice. They'd heard the rumors of a secret fleet, but they had never believed it could exist. But now, as Earth's ships approached Varlock space, something was changing. The Varlock had long thought of humanity as insignificant, a small, weak species, but now they were about to face a force unlike any they had encountered. Rice knew that the first step in the mission would be the hardest. Getting through the Varlock defenses was going to be a challenge, but they had done their homework. They knew the enemy's weaknesses, and they had a plan. The key was to remain unseen, to strike fast, and to make their point without mercy. The fleet's ships moved silently across space, cutting through the darkness like shadows. Each ship had its own mission. Some would disable enemy communications, others would take out defense systems, and a few would rescue the child from his captors. No one in the Phantom Fleet was there for glory. They were there to send a message. On the surface of Xerekis Prime, the Varlock didn't know they were being watched. Their focus was on their gladiatorial games, where the human child was locked in a cage for their entertainment. The Varlock had not expected Earth to respond in any way. They thought humanity was too weak, too divided. They were wrong. As the Phantom Fleet moved closer to the Varlock homeworld, the tension among Earth's military leaders grew. There was no turning back now. The fate of the child, and of Earth's reputation, rested on this mission. Back on Earth, a quiet message was broadcast to the planet. The Phantom Fleet has been deployed. No one harms one of ours and gets away with it. It was a statement of resolve. Earth was no longer a planet to be ignored or trampled upon. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for too long. Now they would learn that Earth had a strength no one could ignore. The fleet was nearing the edge of Varlock space. Soon, the Phantom Fleet would begin its mission. But Reyes knew one thing for certain. When they struck, they would not be just rescuing a child. They would be changing the course of history. And the galaxy would never forget what Earth was capable of. The Phantom Fleet moved like a shadow through the vastness of space. As Earth's ships neared the edge of Varlock territory, the tension in the command room of the Phantom Fleet headquarters was palpable. Commander Talia Rice stood in front of the large display screen, her gaze fixed on the blinking lights marking their progress. Every ship was on course, every system running smoothly. But inside, she knew that this moment would decide more than just the fate of a child. It was a matter of pride, of survival. Humanity had been pushed too far. The Varlock's cruel treatment of the child, a symbol of Earth's strength and potential, had been the breaking point. "We're almost there, Commander," Lieutenant Mark Lawson said, his voice calm, though his eyes revealed the weight of the mission. "Let's move swiftly," Rice replied, her voice steady, betraying none of the tension she felt inside. She had trained for this her entire life, but now it was real. Every decision would have consequences, and the stakes were higher than ever. Earth's future was on the line, and so was the reputation of every human alive. The fleet of sleek, advanced ships was spread out in a formation designed for stealth. The Phantom Fleet had one primary objective: to strike without warning, make their point, and leave before the Varlock even knew what had happened. The ships weren't built for all-out war. They were built for quiet, fast strikes. The key to the mission's success was speed and surprise. As they neared the Varlock planet Zericus Prime, the quiet hum of their engines reverberated through the ships. The Varlock had one of the most sophisticated defense systems in the galaxy, but Earth's fleet had prepared for this. The humans had spent years studying the Varlock, learning their weaknesses. And now, the time had come to use that knowledge. "Time to disable their communications," Rice said, her voice sharp. "No messages out, no reinforcements coming in. We strike fast and silent." Lawson nodded. The fleet split into smaller groups, each ship heading toward its designated target. Some ships aimed for the planet's communication relay stations, others for the Varlock's powerful radar systems. The plan was simple: take out their ability to communicate, then slip into their atmosphere unnoticed. Back on Zericus Prime, the Varlock were completely unaware of the danger that was closing in on them. They had seen the human child in their cages, but they thought it was just another act of dominance. They hadn't expected Earth to respond. They hadn't expected Earth to send a message through such quiet, precise force. And they certainly hadn't expected the Phantom Fleet to be waiting at their door. Reyes watched the operations unfold from the command center. The first wave of ships reached the Varlock's communication hub, and within seconds, all Varlock transmissions were cut off. The galaxy's most advanced defense systems, the ones that the Varlock thought would keep them safe, were now completely useless. "First target down," Lawson reported. "The planet's blind." Reyes nodded. "Good. Now we move to Phase 2. Phase 2 was critical: rescuing the child. A small team would land on Zericus Prime and infiltrate the Varlock's base. Reyes had no doubts about the skill of her crew. They were some of the best soldiers Earth had to offer. But she knew that even the best had their limits. The Varlock would be ready for them. Meanwhile, the rest of the fleet continued their silent assault. They moved closer to the Varlock's capital city, Varthos, undetected. As Earth's ships descended into the atmosphere, their engines quieted, and they slipped through the clouds like ghosts. The only sign that the Phantom Fleet was there was the faintest trace of a ripple in the sky. Inside the capital, the Varlock were beginning to feel the first signs of something being wrong. Their radar systems were offline, and they had no communication with their outer fleets. But it was too late. Earth's ships were already in position. A team of specially trained soldiers, humans who had spent years preparing for missions like this, landed near the Varlock compound holding the child. They moved quickly, blending into the shadows of the alien city. The team knew they had a small window of time. The longer they stayed, the more likely the Varlock would discover them. But they had a job to do. The child needed to be freed, and Earth's message needed to be sent. The mission was going smoothly. The team breached the compound and moved swiftly through the halls. They reached the cell where the child was being held and found him in a cage, dirty and exhausted. His eyes were wide with fear, but there was a spark in them, a determination that made him stand out among the alien captives. "Hang on, we're getting you out of here," one of the soldiers whispered as he unlocked the cage. The child nodded, but didn't speak. His mind was still reeling from everything that had happened, but deep down, he understood something very important. Earth wasn't going to leave him behind. Humanity would not let this stand. As the team extracted the child, they heard the sound of distant Varlock footsteps. The time to leave had come. "Let's move." Rise barked over the comms, her eyes locked on the screen showing the team's progress. The mission was nearing its end, but they still had one last objective: to escape without being caught. The escape from the Varlock compound was swift. The Phantom Fleet's elite team moved with precision, their mission clear: get the child to safety and leave no trace behind. As they rushed through the compound's darkened hallways, the sound of distant Varlock soldiers grew louder. Time was running out. "Stay close and keep quiet," the team leader, Sergeant Ella Grant, whispered, her voice steady despite the rising tension. The child, still silent and shaken, walked in front of her, his small hand gripped tightly by one of the soldiers. They knew they had to get out before the Varlock realized what had happened. The hallways of the Varlock compound were unlike anything the team had seen before. The walls were made of an unfamiliar dark metal that seemed to absorb the light, and the air was thick with the scent of alien technology. Despite their focus, the soldiers couldn't help but feel the weight of the planet pressing down on them, as though Xerekis Prime itself was watching them. "We've reached the exit point," Sergeant Grant muttered to herself, checking her wristwatch. The plan had been to exit through a hidden service tunnel, but as they neared the exit, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. The soldiers moved quickly, slipping into an alcove. They held their breath as a patrol of Varlock soldiers passed by, unaware of the human team's presence. Their high-pitched voices filled the air as they spoke in their alien language, but the humans remained still, blending into the shadows. Once the patrol was gone, Sergeant Grant gave the signal. "Move out." The child's legs were trembling with exhaustion, but he pressed on, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. For the first time in days, he felt hope. He had been trapped in that cage for so long. He had almost given up. But now, as the soldiers led him to freedom, he realized there was a strength within him that had been waiting to emerge. They'd reached the exit, a hidden hatch in the floor, barely noticeable among the metallic panels of the compound. With a few quick movements, Sergeant Grant and the team leader pried it open, revealing a dark tunnel beneath. The air inside smelled damp, and the faint sound of distant machinery echoed from far below. "Down we go," Sergeant Grant said softly. The team descended into the depths of the tunnel, the child close behind them. They moved quickly, knowing the Varlock would soon discover their escape. The tunnel led them to a small hangar, where a Phantom Fleet ship was waiting. Once inside, the team locked the hatch behind them, and the ship's engines hummed to life. Within moments, they were airborne, climbing rapidly out of Xerekis Prime's atmosphere. But the danger wasn't over yet. The Varlock would soon realize they had been infiltrated, and a search would be underway. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Sergeant Grant ordered, taking the pilot's seat. The rest of the team strapped in, securing the child in one of the available seats. He looked out the window at the planet below, its surface slowly shrinking as they ascended. For a moment, he felt as though he might be dreaming. The ship's engines roared as they broke through the atmosphere, and the blue-green orb of HFY Prime fell away beneath them. The child sat back, his eyes tired but alert. He had escaped the cage, but he knew that the hard part was just beginning. Back on Earth, Commander Talia Rise was watching the mission unfold on a series of screens. The Phantom Fleet had successfully infiltrated the Varlock compound, and the child was safely aboard one of the ships. Now the focus shifted to extraction. The fleet had to leave Varlock space and return home without drawing attention. Rice couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The mission had gone smoothly so far, but she knew that the real challenge was yet to come. The Varlock were powerful, and they would not let this insult go unpunished. Earth had just struck a blow to their pride, and they would not stand by quietly. The Phantom Fleet was already preparing for the final phase of their mission. The fleet had been built for situations like this, where a quick strike was necessary, followed by an even quicker retreat. The Varlock, with their advanced technology and large fleets, could not match the stealth and precision of Earth's ships. "Commander, the fleet is preparing for final phase," Lieutenant Lawson reported as he entered the command center. Reyes nodded. "Good. We'll need to be ready for anything. The Varlock won't take this lying down." The child, sitting quietly in the corner of the ship, overheard the conversation. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of relief. He was safe, at least for now. But there was a deeper understanding in his eyes. He knew that this wasn't just about him. This was about something much bigger, something that could change the galaxy forever. The Varlock may have underestimated humanity, but the message had been sent. Earth was not to be ignored. And the galaxy would soon realize just how far humanity would go to protect its own. As the ship sailed through the stars, the child leaned back in his seat, finally allowing himself to close his eyes. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in days, he allowed himself to dream of a future without chains. The ship carrying the child, and the team was now in deep space, far from HFY Prime and its dangers. Yet even in the relative safety of the stars, there was no time to relax. The Phantom Fleet had completed its mission. At least, part of it. The child was safe, but the Varlock were not the type to forget a blow to their pride. Earth had just made a powerful enemy, and the coming storm was inevitable. Commander Talia Rice stood by the command table, eyes locked on the holographic map of the galaxy. The fleet was heading back to Earth, but they were not out of danger yet. The Varlock would soon mobilize. It was only a matter of time before they sent their fleet to chase down the humans who had humiliated them. "Lieutenant Lawson," she said, her voice calm but filled with purpose, "begin preparations for the fleet to go into stealth mode. We don't need to be seen." "Aye, Commander," Lawson responded, his hands moving quickly over the console. The ship hummed as systems began to engage, and the fleet fell into a formation that would help them remain hidden from Varlock sensors. Reyes turned to the soldier sitting beside her, Sergeant Ella Grant, who had led the team on the ground. "How's the child?" she asked quietly, not wanting to disturb the boy who had been through so much. Sergeant Grant looked over at the boy, sitting quietly in a seat, his eyes staring out of the small window. "He's better. Quiet, but he's holding up. We've provided him with food and water, and he's starting to look less exhausted. But I don't think he fully understands what's happened yet. He still thinks we might be going back to HFY Prime." Reyes sighed softly. She knew the child had been through an ordeal beyond anything a person his age should have to endure. Yet despite the fear that had been in his eyes when they first rescued him, there was something else, a spark of hope. The boy had seen humans fight for him, and in his heart, he likely realized that he was safe. "We're not going back there," Reyes said, her voice firm. "The Varlock will regret underestimating Earth, but we won't let them get away with it. We have our mission, and we've done what was needed. But now, we have to make sure the galaxy knows that humanity will not be bullied. Back on Earth, the situation was rapidly evolving. The Varlock had already begun their response. News of the human raid on Xerakis Prime had spread quickly, causing an uproar among the galaxy's leadership. The Varlock were a proud and powerful race, and the humiliation of losing the child to a small human fleet was something they could not ignore. In the halls of the Galactic Council, representatives from all over the galaxy were already discussing the incident. Varlock officials were demanding action, but many others, especially those who had always viewed humans with suspicion, saw this as an opportunity. Earth has crossed a line, a representative from the Raylorn species stated angrily. They've attacked a Varlock world and stolen one of their own. We cannot let this stand. The Varlock ambassador, Raxel, clenched his fists in anger but kept his voice controlled. The humans will pay for this. We will ensure that they understand the consequences of their actions. But not all voices in the council were filled with anger. Some, especially those who had long observed humanity's rise, saw the event as a turning point. The Aryans, a peaceful species who had always been neutral in galactic matters, had quietly observed Earth's growing influence. There is more to this than a simple rescue mission. An Aryan ambassador spoke up, her voice calm and measured. We must look at the bigger picture. The humans have made their intentions clear. They are no longer a fledgling species. They are a force to be reckoned with. The debate in the council chamber was intense, but in the end, the Varlock were determined to strike back. They would not let Earth's actions go unpunished. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Rise knew that Earth's retaliation was coming. The Varlock would not stop until they had reasserted their power, but that did not mean Earth would back down. Status report, Rise said, turning to her crew. Where are we on stealth? We're almost completely off their radar, Lawson reported. The Varlock won't be able to track us for now, but we have to stay under the radar. Once we hit human space, we'll be safer. For now, we stay silent. Reyes nodded. It was a delicate balance, but she trusted her crew. They had always been able to handle difficult situations, and this time, they had the child to protect. What's the status of the child? Rise asked, her gaze flickering to the boy, still sitting quietly. Sergeant Grant replied, He's starting to open up a little. I think he's starting to trust us, but he still doesn't understand what's happened. He doesn't know what will happen to him next. We've given him some space, but he'll have to face the truth soon. Reyes could only imagine what the child had gone through. He had been held captive by a powerful race, abandoned by all other worlds, and yet he had survived. He was a symbol of human strength, of resilience, and now he was a symbol of Earth's will to protect what mattered. We'll make sure he's safe, Reyes promised. But first, we need to prepare for what comes next. The Varlock might be coming, but Earth was ready. It was a message the galaxy would soon learn: never underestimate humanity. As the human fleet moved steadily toward Earth, the crew stayed alert, knowing that their mission was far from over. Commander Telia Rise stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. The tension in the air was thick. She had faced many challenges in her career, but none quite like this. The Varlock were a powerful enemy, and she had no doubt they would come for them soon. But Earth wasn't going to be caught off guard. Earth had its own secret weapon, one that no one had expected. The Phantom Fleet, a group of elite warships hidden from the galaxy's prying eyes, had been deployed in response to the threat. Their mission was simple: protect Earth and strike back at anyone who dared to threaten humanity. How much longer until we reach Earth? Commander Rise asked, breaking the silence. About 2 days, replied Lieutenant Lawson, his voice steady. If we continue on course, we'll arrive without issue. The Varlock haven't detected us yet. Rise nodded, relieved by the report. It would give them enough time to prepare for the next phase of their plan. The Varlock, though furious and humiliated by the loss of the child, wouldn't act immediately. They would want to strike when they were sure they could hit Earth hard. The key was to remain hidden until the right moment. Meanwhile, the child, the one who had started all of this, was sitting quietly in the back of the command room, staring at the star-filled window. His wide eyes, full of innocence and confusion, gazed out as though he were trying to understand everything happening around him. Sergeant Ella Grant had tried to talk to him, but the boy was silent, lost in thought. He had never been this far from Xerekis Prime before. The galaxy outside was so vast and unknown. The boy had been raised in a world where danger was constant and fear was a daily companion. But here, with the humans, there was something different, something he couldn't quite understand. He felt safe. He could feel the warmth of their protection. And for the first time, he had hope. Sergeant Grant sat next to him, trying to comfort him with a soft voice. "We're going to take good care of you," she said gently. "You don't have to worry anymore. You're safe with us." The boy didn't respond, but his eyes softened. He was beginning to trust them. He didn't fully understand what had happened or what would happen next, but he knew he wasn't alone anymore. As the hours passed, the crew kept watch over the silent boy. Their minds were focused on the Varlock, knowing that the moment they entered Earth's atmosphere, everything would change. The Varlock would be coming for them, and they would stop at nothing to get the child back. Back on Earth, the situation was rapidly unfolding. The Galactic Council was in an uproar, each representative arguing over how to handle the situation. The Varlock were demanding retribution, calling for Earth to be punished for what they had done. But many of the smaller civilizations, those who had long been cautious of the Varlock's growing influence, were starting to voice their support for humanity. They attacked a Varlock world and took one of their own, a Raylorn representative argued. This cannot be allowed to pass without consequences. But an Aryan ambassador, calm and composed, stood to speak. What the Varlock don't understand is that humanity is no longer a helpless species. They've proven their strength, their ability to defend what is theirs. If we allow the Varlock to attack Earth, we risk angering a much larger force. Tension filled the chamber. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and the Varlock weren't happy about it. They had always seen themselves as the galaxy's dominant force. Now, a small human fleet had dared to defy them. The implications were huge. Back on the ship, Commander Rice was in a strategy meeting with her senior officers. "We need to be ready for whatever the Varlock send our way," she said, her voice sharp. "The Phantom Fleet is our first line of defense, but we can't underestimate the enemy." Lieutenant Lawson spoke up. "The Varlock are powerful, but we have something they don't: human ingenuity. If they try to come for us, they'll learn just how capable we are." "Agreed," Rice said. "Our goal is to protect the child, yes, but also to show the galaxy that humanity will not be bullied. Earth is not to be underestimated." A sudden beep interrupted the conversation. Lawson looked up from his console, his eyes widening. "Commander, we're picking up a Varlock signature. It's faint, but it's definitely them." Ray stiffened. "How far?" "Not far. They're close, Commander. It looks like they've already mobilized." The tension in the room thickened. The Varlock were coming. They had wasted no time in organizing a response. The quiet calm of space was about to be shattered. "We need to make a decision," Rice said, her voice cool and determined. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We can't let them get a lock on us. We'll be ready to fight if it comes to that." As the crew prepared for what was sure to be an intense confrontation, the child in the back of the ship turned toward the windows once more. The stars outside looked peaceful, but he knew things were about to change. Humanity had shown him a new path, a chance for survival. But would that be enough to keep him safe? The battle was about to begin. The tension in space was palpable. Commander Talia Rice stood in front of the command center, watching as the faint signals of the Varlock fleet grew clearer on her screen. The enemy was close now, just a few hours away. The time for hiding was over. "All hands, prepare for combat," she said, her voice steady but firm. The crew, trained and ready, moved quickly to their stations. The Phantom Fleet was the humans' secret weapon, and it was about to be put to the test. Rise had no doubt they would hold their ground, that the Varlock were relentless. They would come for the child, and they would come hard. The Varlock, with their vast warships and advanced technology, believed they were unstoppable. They had never encountered humanity's secret fleet before, and they had no idea what they were up against. But Earth wasn't afraid anymore. Back in the holding area, Surgeon Ella Grant sat beside the child, trying to comfort him as best she could. The boy had grown more restless, his eyes darting around as though he could sense the danger approaching. He had never been in a situation like this before. The safety he had felt earlier was now replaced by fear, a deep uncertainty about what would happen next. "It's going to be okay," Sergeant Grant said softly, trying to reassure him. "We're going to make sure you are safe, I promise." But the boy didn't answer. His thoughts were far away, caught up in a whirlpool of confusion and fear. His world had been turned upside down. The Varlock, who had tormented him for so long, were now coming for him again. He didn't know why Earth had come to his rescue, but he felt a deep sense of gratitude. The humans were his only hope now. Back on the bridge, Commander Rice studied the enemy's movements. "They're coming in fast," Lawson reported. "Their fleet is larger than we thought, but they're not making any moves to engage yet." Reyes nodded. The Varlock were calculating, waiting for the right moment. They were waiting for the first strike, and that was something they couldn't afford. She looked over at the large screen in front of her, showing a map of the area. The Varlock ships were drawing closer, and the clock was ticking. "Prepare to engage when we have a clear shot," she ordered. "We can't let them take us by surprise." A sudden alert blared across the ship, causing everyone to freeze for a moment. A series of bright lights flashed on the screen. Enemy ships were now on a direct course for Earth's orbit. They were going to launch their assault. "They're here," Rice said, her tone tight. "Prepare to launch all defenses." As the Varlock ships closed in, the human fleet sprung into action. The first volley of fire came from the Varlock. Powerful blasts that tore through the empty void of space. The Phantom Fleet responded immediately, launching a counterattack of their own. The battle began, filling the vastness of space with the sound of explosions and the glow of weapons fire. Rice watched as the first of the Varlock ships shattered into pieces. The human fleet's advanced technology was proving to be a match for the Varlock's superior firepower. The humans had designed their ships to be faster, more agile, and equipped with weapons that could outsmart even the most advanced alien systems. It was a gamble, but it was working. The Varlock were taken by surprise. Their ships, though larger and more heavily armed, were not designed to fight in the same way. They were powerful, yes, but they weren't prepared for the speed and precision of the human fleet. And they certainly weren't ready for the determination that filled the hearts of every human soldier. As the battle raged on, the boy sat in the back of the command room, watching the chaotic lights flash through the windows. He couldn't understand the mechanics of the fight, but he could feel the energy in the air, the sense of urgency and the courage that filled every corner of the ship. He had seen the humans fight. He had seen them stand against the Varlock. And for the first time, he felt a spark of hope deep within him. Maybe, just maybe, Earth could win this. Maybe he could finally be free. The fight was intense, but the human fleet had the advantage. One by one, the Varlock ships were being disabled, their weapons falling silent as the Phantom Fleet outmaneuvered and outwitted them at every turn. But the Varlock were not giving up. A new wave of ships arrived, more powerful than the first. This was their final push. Commander Rice watched the new ships approach. "We need to end this now," she said, her voice filled with determination. "All ships, fire at will." The battle reached its peak as the last Varlock ship was destroyed in a brilliant flash of light. The skies, once filled with the chaos of battle, fell silent. The Varlock were defeated. The human fleet had won. The crew let out a collective sigh of relief, their hearts racing. It had been a hard fight, but Earth had protected what was theirs. The boy was safe, and humanity had once again proven that no one could stand in their way. Commander Reyes stood tall, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. "Humanity will protect its own. No one will ever threaten us again." And with that, the human fleet turned back toward Earth, victorious.